how do you make sure that by the time they've got to the next stage, they've consumed content which has raised their awareness of you, and you've sort of positioned yourself more as an expert within that space, so they kind of know, like, and trust you?
In those sorts of situations, you really have two options. Option A is just stop doing what everyone else is doing. A lot of companies will try these tactics, these trendy manipulations to try and get a boost in their ad performance or a boost in their website traffic or a boost of their lead gen. The things that everyone copies and everyone tries, and then everyone on the receiving end of it gets sick and tired of. So it stops working really quickly. Then option B, just do what your company can authentically provide. So if you have an actual solution to a problem that people are experiencing, if you have a unique way of doing things, a unique approach, a unique even way of bundling your services, focus on that. And yeah, you are going to have some people copying you because you're doing something unique, special, different, refreshing.
Ray, welcome to the SiteShare podcast.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
All the way from Texas.
Yes, long ways away. I'm on a completely different calendar day than you are.
Right, we are in the future here. So if you anything you need to know, just holler.
Yeah, don't tell me what happens. I like to be surprised.
So you are from Cornell Content Marketing, and today we are beginning a mini series here on how to get 90% pre-sold buyers using psychology-driven marketing. We've broken this into you have broken this into 3 different episodes. The first one is the psychology of a savvy buyer appealing to modern informed audiences. Part 2 is why you should never rely purely on ads for sustainable growth. And part 3 is why your marketing feels icky and how to fix it. As I mentioned to you offline, these are all topics that are very close to home for us as well. I know you're primarily coming from that B2B market where we're sort of more B2C. So I think we'll probably be able to come up with some good collabs here and pull some ideas. So for you guys out there that are in the trade space, you're dealing with a couple of people that are from both sides of the pond here in relations to B2B and B2C. So I dare say you're going to get some really good insight out of this conversation. Ray, before we jump on in, do you want to give us a 30,000 foot overview as to who you are, what you do, why you do it, so on and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background and my journey into marketing is a bit obscure. My background is actually in psychology. So I went to school to be a counselor in the prison system. My parents were both police officers. The police station was my babysitter growing up. And I was infatuated with both the criminal justice world and the world of psychology. So that's where I was headed. And as I was going through a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's in professional clinical counseling and marriage and family therapy, and then another master's in criminology, all the while I was paying my way through school as a freelance writer. I was doing website development, website copy, blog content, things like that on the side. And after working in a drug rehab center and a community counseling center and a mental hospital, I just completely burned out on the mental health world. It was this revolving door of seeing the same patients over and over and over again. And the bureaucracy and red tape of the system made it so we really couldn't do the things that those people needed.
Really?
In order to intervene and help them get their life back on track. So instead of continuing to spin my wheels, I threw myself full-time into my side hustle. And now, 17 going on 18 years later, Cornell Content Marketing is a full-service, organic demand generation agency where we specialize in that psychology-driven marketing, not for the purposes of manipulating and compelling people to do what we want online. That's exactly what we're trying to fix in the industry. Instead, we want to focus on what we refer to as feel-good marketing, where we're giving people exactly what they need for their brains to experience that dopamine hit, for them to bond to brands and really connect on that oxytocin-induced level so that we're healing the relationships between businesses and buyers.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think, since Hormozy wrote that book, there's been so much adoption into the relationship between psychology and sales and things like that. And
Yep.
I feel like as a result of that, the landscape has thankfully um, like it got forced down sort of a certain direction at one point, and everyone was doing the same thing. And I still feel like there's people out there still trying to do the same thing, like give away the farm. That whole, I think the like like what I'm interested in hearing as well from in your take is how that's kind of evolving and how you can kind of keep ahead of the curve with those kind of things so that it doesn't become stale and just like I said now they're noise. Like we'll launch ads and within a week someone's copied. Like we had one competitor copy our ads word for word without even changing out the case studies. Like it was just insane. And I was like, it's just noise. At this point, I was like, you know what? This is just noise.
Yeah. So in those sorts of situations, you really have two options. Either option A is just stop doing what everyone else is doing, where a lot of
Mm.
companies will try these tactics, these trendy manipulations to try and get a boost in their ad performance or a boost in their website traffic or a boost of their lead gen. And those are the things that everyone copies and everyone tries. And then everyone on the receiving end of it gets sick and tired of. So it stops working really quickly. Then option B is just do what your company can authentically provide. So if you have an actual solution to a problem that people are experiencing, if you have a unique way of doing things, a unique approach, a unique even way of bundling your services, focus on that. And yeah, you are going to have some people copying you because you're doing something unique, special, different, refreshing. But that's the only way to really sustain that long term differentiation that people are not going to get sick of.
Yeah, sure. Um, I know I've read a lot of books, and we sort of practice as well that whole kind of what you're saying there, like developing the
Yeah.
unique mechanism within the business, and from our perspective with the B2C, it's about how do you sort of you build out this unique mechanism for the organization in a way that is kind of a differentiator between competition and and things like that, and it kind of comes with a bit of momentum really when you start like evolving like operating processes and then turning that into something that forms even something that you can showcase in like an infographic or like just helping people understand, well, this is our way of doing the thing. So I'd love to like dive a little bit deeper into that with you as well, just to sort of understand like from a psychological point of view, um, what are we actually like, where do we start foundationally so that we are appealing on the psychology side of the conversation when it comes to like offering services through marketing or and I know in one of the later episodes we're going to be talking, or maybe the next one actually, about why it shouldn't always be about ads. And I love that concept because it really shouldn't be. Like we felt guilty of that ourselves. Like all of our leads have started coming in through paid traffic, and I was like, this is not
Right.
sustainable. Like this is
Right.
crazy. And we're doing this for clients where we're trying to implement, integrate, email marketing and outreach and like different like automations and nurture sequences and all these kind of dynamics into their marketing ecosystem so that it's not so dependent always on the
Yeah.
new lead.
Yeah, exactly. And to answer your question, it makes me think of what we use whenever we're building out a marketing strategy, which is the stages of change model in behavioral psychology. So, in working as a substance abuse counselor and running substance abuse groups and working at a rehab facility, I spent a lot of time working with this stages of change model where it breaks down what are the various experiences and what is the mental state of the person who's trying to change one of the most difficult to evolve behaviors, which is addiction. And if that model can work for
Mm.
people who are trying to change such a biochemically stuck behavior that's damaging to their lives, then it can work for changing buyer behavior as well. And a lot of times, what we have to do in marketing is take someone from either doing nothing or buying from a competitor. And we're trying to change that behavior into, hey, buy from this company in particular. And so as you go through those stages of change, if you look at what a lot of companies do, they're really only touching on a few, probably one or two of the pre-sales stages of change. Whereas if you actually map out your marketing to every single stage of change, and there's 10 in total, but there are 5 that are pre-transaction, then that's where you actually provide far more reinforcement of the buying decision to get them that 80 to 90% of the way pre-sold before they ever even reach your sales team member.
So I don't know how familiar you are with the concept around. I know this came from a study. I believe it was Google themselves that actually did this study relating to touch points and inquiries and customer engagement, things like that. And they defined it as like the 7-11-4 principle. Are you
Yeah,
familiar
is
with
that
that?
the one where they say you have to have at least 7 touch points with someone before they're willing to buy from you?
7 hours of content over 11 different interactions across 4 different
Ah, that must be a
platforms.
much more recent study because that's way more in depth than the statistic that people have been working with for the last 10 years or so. Yeah, that's interesting.
But it kind of plays heavily into
Definitely.
what you're talking about there in the space of like how do you get a customer to become 90% pre-sold before they get to you. I mean, if correct me if I'm wrong here, but the only way you can really do that is through
Absolutely.
content.
Yes, exactly. And a variety of content. And a lot of people think, oh man, that means I have to
Right.
be on social media and I have to be doing email marketing and I have to be doing blog content and video and TikTok and all of these things. Really, that's not the case. If you can figure out the type of content that comes the most naturally for you to create, you can then use that one point of creation to create derivatives of that content in all other formats, whether it's audio, video, static, images, whatever you need.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, truthfully, over the last 12 months, that dynamic's
Mm-hmm.
changed quite a lot because where initially I would have said to guys, listen, start
Mm-hmm.
with video, even though you're uncomfortable with it, because we can take a video, we can repurpose it into audio, we can publish video, we can turn video into blogs, we can turn blogs into social posts, we can turn social posts into email campaigns and all this kind of stuff. So like the re-syndication pattern from a video was always a lot stronger. But like what we've, over the last 12 months with the sort of adoption of AI tools, we can kind of see it go back and
Yeah.
forth the other way now as well. It's like we'll just start with an article and then we can turn that into a video using an avatar or something along those lines. So there's a lot more options available
Yes,
these days.
absolutely.
Um, but I know fundamentally from the point of conversion, and when we're talking conversion from a B2C perspective, it's essentially okay. Well, booking into like a qualified discovery call, which is essentially like marketing,
Mm-hmm.
like an MQL,
Mm-hmm.
marketing qualified lead. Um, and then, of course, off the back of that, which becomes a little bit more of a sales conversation, which is like a sales qualified lead, like going on from that. But it's very important that we're going through this exercise with all our clients right now, and as part of the framework, it's okay. How do we what are we sending out to the customers, to the not yet customers at the various stages of the sales process? Kind of leveraging a lot on the 7-11-4 principle, but like how do you make sure that by the time they've got to the next stage, they've consumed content which has raised their awareness of you, and you've sort of positioned yourself more as an expert within that space, so they kind of know, like, and trust you a little bit
Yeah.
further.
So you have to understand where people are finding your content and then what the next step is.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of companies, they think, okay, so we need to be producing content on social and we need to be ranking on SEO. And we have all these things that we want to tell people about. Let's just put all of it onto articles or social posts. And it kind of ends up looking like this polka dot pattern where nothing's really connected. Whereas if you map out, okay, what are the first things that people are going to be searching for with that high intent eventually to buy, but really right now they're in the research stages. That's when they're in this problem awareness sort of stage of that behavior change. That's where they're looking for information on, I know a lot of your listeners are tradesmen. So, for example, if we're talking about what's kind of like your most popular trade that you think?
Well, I'll take it back a step further, because what you're saying is exactly what and I've said this 1,000 times on the podcast. When you're going down the content path, whether it's for the purpose of what we're talking about today or just in general to have content on the website that can be optimized and that kind of thing, I always say to the listeners and the viewers and our clients is just start with the top 5 questions that you get asked the most about your thing, and answer that with content. And conceptually, what that is attempting to achieve is 2 things. First of all, you're preventing yourself from ever having to answer that question again, because if someone comes to you and they say, "Hey, I've got a question around these solar panels," and you go, "Right, well, here's a video I did on it." And second of all, if somebody comes across that bit of content on the website, they've already consumed it. Even though it might not be quantified as such, but they're a little bit further down the sales cycle in terms of qualification than someone that has not seen that video yet.
Absolutely.
So I mean, you could take solar or roofing or remodeling, whatever you want.
And I love solar as an example because that's one of the ones that people do have a lot of questions about. And typically those questions are very predictable. What is this going to look like on my house? How much money is this going to cost me? How much money is this going to save me? Am I able to store power? All of these questions, if you can answer them in your content, that's where you are making that buyer more educated. You are helping that buyer who's already savvy enough to be doing online research become a more savvy buyer. And if you can provide the answers to the questions that they're craving, then they're going to build that trust with you. There's a great book by Marcus Sheridan called They Ask You Answer, and he talks about his business as a pool builder. He and his company, they install pools, and one of the things that he noticed was that nobody in his industry was talking about price. And yet that was the number one question he got asked by customers. You can't shy away from the price question. Everyone is going to ask this. And what he found was when he actually published his prices, even if it was just a range, you can't ever give exact numbers on anything. But if you can say, oh yes, a pool that's fiberglass is going to cost you between $40,000 and $50,000, he built so much trust with the people who were contacting him that it was a no-brainer for them to choose him, because he was the only one who was upfront about that question. I know that goes against a lot of mainstream thinking around pricing.
Well, truthfully, and so this is something that you might, I mean, this probably won't surprise you based on what you've just told me, but so when we're dealing, we have a very defined process for our clients when they're generating, like we do run ads, like we generate them leads, then we have, we call them sales executives, but it's a mix of like artificial intelligence and actual humans we place in client businesses to have the discovery, to basically qualify the leads. So initial layout, or we might have AI do some of that depending on the ad platform or whatever, and then we'll have somebody actually on the phones doing the discovery process for the customer, with the hope of just booking them into a qualified site visit. And I won't go through the specifics around all of that, but importantly, when they're doing the discovery calls, one of the things that is an absolute must that they have to provide is an estimate. And like, it's for a number of reasons, but primarily, yes, I'm sure like building trust and stuff is part of that, but it's also to disqualify and reduce those scenarios, because in a lot of cases, and you guys out there might feel like you're a bit guilty of this yourself, and I know we've got clients that have been guilty of this at $1 million a month in turnover, where their metric for success for their call takers was getting people to site. It was a site visit, and I'm like, this is wrong. You guys, this is a fractured model. It's not about how many site visits you can do; it's how many jobs you can close. And so the CSRs are on the call and they're booking these site visits and they're not qualifying properly. So the guys are getting out there, they're not selling, they're not closing properly. And so they think they're doing everything right, and the salespeople can't sell. And the salespeople are like, these leads suck. Like, no one's got any money. And so it's super important that people understand what these things cost. And I'll say this as well, and this kind of loops back to what we were saying about that whole content marketing ecosystem. There is a huge amount of ignorance in the marketplace for what you guys do. Like, if you're bathroom remodelers, if you're solar electricians, like, people genuinely do not know. Like they will think you can remodel a bathroom for 15 grand because they don't know any different, and they've read somewhere that you can. Like you need to, you have like this uh, opportunity and like obligation to really start educating them and saying to those people, listen, this is why it costs this much. It's not so bad if you get these resistance questions. Like people go, oh, people are just price shopping. They always want the cheapest price. I'm like, no, they just don't understand what it costs. Like teach them, show them what it costs. Like help them identify the difference between a 15 grand, bathroom and a 40 grand bathroom. Like it might all, the common question is always going to be how much is it going to cost? Because that's kind of what people are familiar with asking. I mean, I'd love to get your psych spin on this, but I know like just through, and I say to guys, don't worry if you get resistance on price, just educate them, teach them about why it's better to pay, or what the different packages look like, different materials, all these kind of things. So then they have a better understanding of it. And then they're in that sales cycle where if you are proactive about educating and nurturing and getting back in the space of these individuals, then at some point they'll fall back into that discovery call, site visit, hopefully closed job
Exactly.
scenario.
And oftentimes, if the first time they're hearing those numbers is over the phone or with that person on site, they hear the sticker shock and they immediately shut down. Whereas if you present the number, at least, like I said before, in a range, you're giving them some idea of, okay, if you want this quality of bathroom remodel, it's going to cost about this. If you want this quality of bathroom remodel, it's going to cost about that. If you're giving them that number earlier on, they have a long time for that sticker shock to wear down and for them to become more understanding of what goes into that price. So not only are you going to increase your conversion rate because the people who are booking with you are only people who are already okay with your figures, but also
Correct.
you're giving them that time to come to terms with the number and really justify it in their minds. And then the more that you're able to support their decision making and give them more information, they get to go, oh yeah, okay, I know exactly what this is going to cost me, and I really like that this company is helping me. They're not pressuring me. And so the number becomes even more justifiable because they're forming an emotional connection to you by you providing them with all of that helpful information, by treating them with respect, which that's what a lot of ads don't do. They pressure people, they manipulate people, they make people think, oh, I have to do this right now, otherwise I'm stupid. And that just drives a wedge between your business and your buyers.
I'd love to get your spin on like the conversations that come from like warm traffic, let's call that, referrals, word of mouth, um, slightly less warm but still warmer, like a Google search, like organic, where they might have consumed some content, or there's some intent there. Even a Google ad search, truthfully, where they've typed into Google bathroom remodeler Kansas City or whatever it might be, and then there's the like super cold leads, which I would consider sort of meta, social, Facebook, those kind of leads, where people are literally just seeing an ad that they've stumbled across in their feed, and they're like, "Oh, that looks like a good idea." Big bold offer jumps out of them. Oh, look, we can have our bathroom renovated within 2 weeks, guaranteed. Whatever it might be. Those conversations are very different in the early stages with those prospects, not for better or worse, just based on the level of intent, wherever that relative to where that lead is at in terms of the buying cycle and what they're looking for. I know that causes a lot of, and again, this is where we see content playing a big part in warming up the lead, if you want to call it that. But when they come in super cold and they don't really understand anything about what's going on here, nor are they even sure if they want the thing that you're perhaps offering. Whereas someone that's come in through a referral, they kind of already know what's happened. They've seen it. They've seen the solar installation and then they've on their mate's house, and they're like, yeah, we want the same sort of thing. Like there's a lot more intent there. And so the conversations are very different. And I think a lot of guys that come into, like when we're working with a lot of our clients, they're normally coming out of like the word of mouth and referral model because they can't scale that. Like it's impossible to scale word of mouth, and they want to they want to dive into, like, they need more traffic, they need more leads, they need more conversations, which we typically generate through cold traffic, and then they're like immediately disheartened with the quality of the conversation. But it's a very different conversation, and they don't really understand that. And that's why we actually put people in the business for them now, because we're like, just don't even get disheartened with these conversations. Don't worry about it, because it's very different. It's a hard thing to communicate because people just expect, oh, a lead's a lead, but it's not a lead. A lead is not always a lead.
And it's the warmness of a lead is directly proportionate to how much work is your sales team member going to have to do, because it's directly proportionate to how armed or disarmed that lead is. So one of the number one things any salesperson has to do is disarm the person they're talking to. Today, we are all so bombarded with buy this, buy that. On LinkedIn, I mean, probably 70 to 80% of the messages that I get on LinkedIn are because somebody wants to sell me something. And so
100%.
exactly. And so, and what do? We all put up our walls, and we're going, nope, I'm armed,
Yeah,
I'm guarded, I'm not going to, I'm going to be
yeah, yeah.
skeptical. And I'm going to look for any opportunity to shoot you down and confirm my suspicions, which is that you're just after my money. That's all you care about. And so when you
Yeah.
take that approach to marketing, where your ads are just trying to get the contact information, those leads are very cold. And that means they're going to come to the table armed. They're going to be very guarded. And so when you use a long-term content marketing strategy, every step of the way, you're disarming that person. You're allowing them the comfort of letting their guard down, because they realize, oh, this company is actually trying to help me. And oh, this company actually has a different way of going about this. And oh, wow, this is a great resource that this company provided. Maybe it's a solar installation calculator, or maybe it's a cost savings calculator, something like that, that allows them to feel helped and supported along the way. It's bringing their guard down so that when they do talk to your sales team member, that sales team member doesn't have to work so hard to lower that guard.
Yeah, that's right. And that's kind of, the whole qualification
Mm-hmm.
conversation is, and this is why we put so much emphasis into discovery, because we're like, it's the most
Yeah.
important part of the conversation that we see in the interest of jobs getting closed from the site visit. It all
Mm-hmm.
happens in discovery. And so, like, we'll spend so much time in there asking questions and getting that done right, with the hope that, with the expectation, I should say, that when those site visits occur, a very high percentage of them are going to turn into a closed project following an evolution of that process. But conceptually, it all
Right,
starts there.
because a discovery is focused on, let me figure out what's going on. Let me figure out what the problem is so that I can tailor a solution that's actually going to make this customer's life easier or better, as opposed to it
Yeah,
being a sales conversation where the primary focus there is, let me close this deal. And that's the thing
yeah.
with nowadays, every buyer is so much more savvy than they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. You have to understand that the people that you're speaking to know these tricks. They know the little signs and signals that, oh, this is going to, the high pressure part is coming. The close is coming. They know these things.
Mm.
Sales secrets are no longer secrets. Your buyer knows them. So don't use them. Just be that solution provider to a problem.
I'd like to hear your take, though, on that part of the conversation when it does get to, like, the sale and, like, leading people down, or down the path towards that, because, like, it happens so much within conversations where, if you don't steer them to
Mm-hmm.
the next step of the conversation, which is, okay, well, let's get it moving, and it is kind of pushy. Truthfully, I don't know how that can be avoided, but, like, typically speaking, if that doesn't happen as part of the conversation, then the lead normally just
Right.
disappears, and it's at the detriment of the thing they're trying to achieve in the first place. So I'd love to hear, like, from a psych perspective, like, what the smart play is these days in relation to that, and how to address it properly so that you're not coming across like a cheesy,
Yep.
salesman.
So in marketing and in psychology, especially in CBT counseling, it always comes back to goal setting. what is the goal? If the customer's goal is, and this is something that I ask on quote unquote sales calls all the time. I don't like to refer to them as that, but that's what they are, is what's your goal for having this done? When would you like to have this done by? And if the customer says, oh, I'd love to have this done by June, July, May, then your next step is, okay, in order to help you have that done by this wedding you're hosting or these guests that are coming into town, then we would need to get started by this date. And so if you put in your deposit by this date, then we can lock that in for you and get you to that goal timeline. It always has to come back to what does that person care about? It can't be about you and it can't be about your priorities. It has to be from them. Otherwise, there is no intrinsic motivation for them to take that next step.
It's funny when you, like, I sometimes will go through some of these, processes with other businesses just to humour myself or see if anything different pops up. But, that whole, it's almost like a copy and paste template. And I know who it came from. I'm not going to say it on the podcast, but like, someone's been through this guy's course based on the sales conversation. It's like, there's this, there's this, there's this, there's this, and then there's this. And it's just like, it's hilarious. And and I kind of have to sometimes like zoom out a little bit and remove myself from, I suppose, remove myself a little bit further from it based on the fact that I know it exists and I'm so aware of it, whereas other people may not be. But it is kind of a large psychological journey. And I think it's so cliche and it's so corny and it's so just, but maybe, I guess it works. Like a lot of people are doing it, but then I'm wondering as well maybe the people are doing it because they're not trying other things, or they're not like, they haven't really looked elsewhere, or I don't know.
Yeah. And it's another one of those patterns. Our brains are wired to recognize patterns. And so you're noticing it because you're in this world. You can recognize the signs. And if you treat your buyers like, oh, wait, they might be aware of this pattern. They might be aware of this formula for closing. And you treat them with that respect of being a savvy buyer. You don't use that prescribed template. You just have a genuine, authentic conversation with them. They're so much more likely to respect you, even though they know that you're trying to sell them something.
Yeah. I mean, it just makes me like my blood boil when they're like, so how do you think it'll make you feel?
I know which tactic you're talking about. Yeah.
I just want to jump through the phone and punch them in the face.
What would it mean to you to have this XYZ goal?
Oh, God. Why is that important? Like, dive deeper. Shut up. Oh, anyway, cringeworthy. But yeah, no, it is good. It is good to know that we're on the same page there in terms of like using content to kind of move people further towards the direction of the thing that they're proposing to engage with, just so they have that like a different level of understanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's never really, and another thing is like that whole framework is relevant throughout the different stages too. Like it's never really a done thing. Like as soon as they become a client, then there should be like, okay, well, this is now what we need to be doing. Like it, I think like you kind of got to really think in terms of all the different dynamics and where the different the different parts of the moving parts of the business and the client journey as to where you can leverage content and things like that to create a better experience for that individual.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why when I look at the marketing and sales funnel, most people say that there are 4 stages: brand awareness, interest, decision, action. But I argue that there's a 5th, which is retention. You can't just focus on closing. You have to also focus on retaining that customer, making sure that they are happy, that you're not treating them as if, oh, I got your money, now I don't care about you. Otherwise, how are they ever going to send future business your way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's super, super important. I think as well that's kind of I know we're going to sort of touch on this in the following episode in relation to like relying on ads, but like we see so often when businesses come to us, initially the conversation is very much about we need more leads, and the first thing that we always ask them is, well, tell me about the ones that you've already got
Right.
Like there's a lot of sometimes people want to sacrifice their existing contacts and leads and customers even at the
Yep.
expense of new ones. So
Yep.
yeah, cool. Is there anything that we should wrap up on before we jump into the next episode?
I
In your
think the
opinion?
main premise here is don't treat your buyers like they're stupid. Understand that if you're using a trick, if you're using some kind of tactic, some kind of manipulation, assume that they're going to know about it, that they're going to notice it, that they're going to feel it, that they've seen it before, and that it's not going to work. Whereas if you go into the intentional forming of these relationships with that respect, and you just focus on, I just need to give this person what they need. I need to give them the information they need to be a better buyer and therefore be a better customer and therefore be an easier close, then you're going to have much easier time getting those jobs booked.
What's your take on, from a psychological perspective, on the use of case studies, um, proof of concept
Yeah.
kind of material within
Yeah, I think
marketing?
case studies are brilliant. They are so helpful because one of the things that we like to do as humans is, what's the word, not empathize, project. We like to imagine. This is why we watch television shows. This is why we watch movies. We like to relate to other characters and imagine what that's like and kind of live vicariously through those personalities. Case studies allow for the same thing. The problem is when businesses use case studies to pat their own backs and toot their own horns. If your case study is predominantly focused on, this is what we did and this is what we're so good at and this is what we achieved, that language is just going to turn people off. Whereas if you frame it in the context of, this is who our client was, this is what they wanted, this is what we did for them, and this is the benefit that they achieved on the other side, this is the outcome that they experienced, that's going to be so much more effective because it's going to give those people who are trying to envision, what's it going to be like after I give this company my money? That allows them to do it. They can't relate to you. They can only relate to your previous customers. So keep your case studies focused on those previous customers.
It's so important. Like we have like a monthly email that goes out to our clients, like, hey, fill this form in so we can build out project case studies on their web. Like, truthfully, as a marketing agency, even today, we kind of see the website as like a stage two. I won't say a nice to have as opposed to a need to have, but we really like to leverage the website as a tool to be able to, for people to showcase
Yep.
what they do, position them as an expert. Because I mean, in the majority of cases, the initial lead is going to come through some sort of ad, Google, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it might be. But we want to have the website there to support that argument or back up their claim, And so it's so important, guys, to have like a I'm not talking about a bunch of photos either. Like, just tell your story, because it really does help people understand. Okay, well, this is what they do, who they do it for, where they do it, why they do it, how they do it. And it really like just builds that again. Like, it moves them. It's not necessarily quantifiable, but it moves them through psychological stages of the next stage of the sales process within their own mind, knowing that you're able to deliver the same thing that you did for their neighbor or whatever it might be.
Right.
So it's super important. And then once you have those things collated as well, you can, like you were saying at the very beginning of the conversation, like, you can use that stuff. You could use it in a nurture campaign. You could turn it into a video. You can do whatever you want with it. But if you haven't got it, you can't use
Exactly.
it.
And I love that you said that you need to tell your story on your website, because the thing about memory is, if we can invoke emotion, it's going to be so much more long-term. That memory is going to be deeper ingrained. So if somebody's shopping around for a solar installer and they're looking at 5 different companies, I guarantee you that customer is going to remember and put priority preference on the company whose website made them laugh or made them smile or gave them some kind of positive emotional association. Whereas the rest that just talked about features and benefits and numbers, yeah, that's good information, but it's going to weaken the strength of that memory in their minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Love it. All right. Well, hopefully that was helpful for you guys out there watching this or listening to this, whatever platform you're on. So I'm speaking with Ray Cornell from Cornell Marketing, CornellContentMarketing.com. I'm going to have links to all your stuff, Ray, in the show notes. So if you guys just head over to the SiteShare.com, search Ray, R-A-I, and these pages will all appear as needed. So you can get, and there's a cool little, you've got a few little resources there you've left behind too. So definitely make sure you guys go check those out. We're going to wrap up this episode. We're going to come back in a following episode where we're going to be talking about why you should never rely on ads for sustainable growth. Again, I'm guessing we both have a lot of insight into this across different commercial and residential sort of scenarios. So I think that's going to be super useful for you guys. Stay tuned for that one. Ray, thank you so much again for your time, and I look forward to chatting to you in an upcoming episode.
New Zealand-based home renovation company, 6,593% ROAS. Sydney-based solar company, 2,700% ROAS. Hunter region-based bathroom renovation company, 5,616% ROAS. Melbourne-based building company, 13,182% return on ad spend. Adelaide-based solar company, 2,881% return on ad spend. Guys, the list goes on and on. If you're a trade-based business and you work with projects like roofing, solar, bathroom renovations, kitchen renovations, anything like that, head across to tradie.wiki/pod for podcast. Tradie.wiki/pod for podcast. Book in a conversation. It is game changing.